Imagine a community where everyone's rights are respected, where no one is above or below the law, and every person is treated the same, where government is open, corruption cannot take root, and justice is designed for all. Does this community accept exclusion, exploitation, deprivation? Does it invite brutality, impunity, unrest? No. With rule of law, there is justice, opportunity, peace. To build this community, we create knowledge about the problems we face, build awareness about solutions that work, and take action to strengthen the rule of law foundation all communities need to thrive. Today, that foundation is crumbling around the world, and the pandemic has set us back. Progress toward global goals has stalled, and the vulnerable have fallen further behind. But now we're back together. And together we can get back on track. We will listen, learn, connect, collaborate. We will cross the lines that divide us and grasp the common ground we share. We will raise our voices, raise our hands, and commit to strategies that advance our shared demands. Accountability, just laws and equal rights, open government, and people-centered justice. Together, we'll build this movement for the common good, for the rule of law, for justice, for dignity, for everyone.
Good morning. Welcome. My name is William Hubbard, and I have the privilege of serving as chair of the board of the World Justice Project. And on behalf of the board and the staff of the project and our partners in producing this forum, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all to the World Justice Forum 2022. Those of you here in The Hague and all of you online as well. It is really great to be back together again. You number over 1,000 from 119 countries here in The Hague and online. It has been 3 long years since the last World Justice Forum, and we are long overdue. The rule of law challenges are mounting, and we very much need this week together to grapple with those challenges and together to chart a course to a brighter future. Even as we meet here in this beautiful city of peace and justice, we are reminded that in far too many places and far too many people, peace, justice, and the rule of law are a distant promise, and a brutal and deadly conflict in their daily life a reality. And so before we begin this morning, please join me in a moment of silence in solidarity with the victims of violent conflict, including those in Ukraine, Ethiopia, Yemen, Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Myanmar, among other strife-torn lands. Thank you. Our forum theme is building more just communities. and thinking of the victims of conflict drives home how imperative that change is, that charge is. The global pandemic has laid bare grave injustices and made clear the price we pay for neglecting the rule of law. Our goal this week is to dig into the long-standing structural inequalities and governance weaknesses that have deepened the health crisis and continue to hold us back. We will focus on three complementary objectives that are critical to getting back on track with the Sustainable Development Goals: combating corruption, countering discrimination, and advancing access to justice. We have a terrific action-oriented agenda packed with opportunities to learn, share insights, and build new collaborations across these themes. Today, we focus on defining these challenges. Tomorrow, we turn to identifying what works, including hearing from our 30 World Justice Challenge finalists in the Challenge Showcase. And then, those of you here in The Hague will have an opportunity to board buses and head to off-site sessions hosted by some of the many justice institutions that call the city of The Hague their home. On Thursday, we will be back here to focus on recommendations and commitments to take action. Throughout, you will have opportunities to hear from global and national leaders on the plenary stage, and then move into breakout working sessions for learning, networking, and collective problem solving. Most of these will take place in person here at the forum. Some will be hybrid, in person and online. And some will be online only, optimized for our virtual audience, but available to everyone through the conference app on your personal device. And we will have special designated viewing rooms here at the forum as indicated in the program. If you don't have it yet, be sure to download the conference app. It is your key to the forum, including the online programming, agenda updates, and networking opportunities with other participants. WJP have a special staff label on their badges and will be happy to help should you need assistance in downloading that app. One final note about the program. Please let me put a plug in for two special evening events. This evening at 5:30, we will reconvene in this room for a special celebration of the power of expression, featuring a performance by Afghan musicians in exile and a dance troupe from the Codarts International Academy, as well as the announcement of WJP's Rule of Law Award, our highest honor. Tomorrow evening, following the off-site working sessions around The Hague, our in-person audience is invited to a reception hosted by the municipality. And following that, right across the street, you have the opportunity to take in a discussion with the director of a path-breaking criminal justice documentary from Mexico, or to hear excerpts and be in dialogue with the composer of a jazz opera about the experience of Holocaust refugees, a plight that remains sadly too familiar today. Before turning to our opening speakers, let me conclude with some important thank yous. A forum like this does not come together overnight or through the efforts of just one organization. Indeed, we at the WJP are emphatic that this is not the WJP forum. It belongs to all of us, our movement. And in that spirit, we have worked together, hand in glove, with a number of important partners. First and foremost, we want to say thank you to our co-producing partners, Civicus, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, HIL, IDLO, and Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just, and Inclusive Societies, who have been with us from day one and made invaluable contributions to every dimension of this event. We are also deeply grateful to our forum sponsors, especially Microsoft, the Municipality of The Hague, the Chandler Foundation, HPE, and Wilson Sonsini, and also so many other sponsors and supporting partner organizations who have helped make this forum a reality. Now let me turn to our opening speakers, who will set the stage for our forum deliberations with their perspectives on the global state of the rule of law. To start, no better than to hear from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, from whom we have a brief recorded message.
Distinguished speakers, colleagues, thank you to the World Justice Project for convening this important forum. It is a pleasure to participate. Building more just communities, the theme of this discussion, is a core objective for all of us here today. Fighting against corruption and discrimination, ensuring access to justice. These are all crucial steps towards achieving the most vital goals of this century, the Sustainable Development Goals. These goals are at the heart of my office's priorities. In fact, together with our mandate for peace, they articulate the objectives of the mandate of the entire United Nations. Acting on these goals must be the objective of not only the United Nations, but of all of us. Last year, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres laid out a vision of global cooperation in his Our Common Agenda report. In view of the persistent blame directed towards various groups for the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, he highlighted the urgency of adopting comprehensive laws against discrimination. Justice means equality. Justice means fairness. Justice means accountability, fighting impunity, and offering redress. It also means leaving no one behind. In our deliberations today, we must not forget those who have traditionally been left on society's margins, who have not had a voice to seek the justice that all human beings have the right to enjoy. We have seen the dramatic impacts of the pandemic on minority communities. They have suffered loss of lives, livelihoods, educational opportunities. They have suffered loss of dignity. In many countries, we also see a rising tide of hatred and violence against minorities and migrants, as well as against other groups. My office will soon launch a guide on protecting minority rights, a how-to manual on developing comprehensive anti-discrimination legislation. It will provide lawmakers and advocates with the tools and practical examples to develop legislation consistent with international legal standards on the right to equality and non-discrimination. It will aim to assist states in meeting their core international law obligations. Finally, it will provide specific guidance on the link between anti-discrimination law and minorities' rights. Colleagues, comprehensive anti-discrimination laws hold transformative power. At their simplest, they can advance positive changes in society by increasing understanding of discrimination, stimulating action to prevent it, and fostering a commitment to eliminating it. With understanding comes change. People exposed to discrimination because of their status, identity, or beliefs are able to challenge the treatment they have experienced. They have the tools to seek remedy for the harms they have suffered. And over time, with such change, marginalized groups are more visible and can participate in decision-making that affects them and all of society. We must remember, however, that laws alone cannot be the sole driver of change. They must be part of dedicated whole-of-society responses, especially by states, in combating structural, systemic, and institutional discrimination. We're seeing some examples of progress around the world. Many state authorities have worked to ensure people with physical mobility or sensory impairments have better access to public spaces. Employers have proactively identified disparities in their workforces and have established programs to increase participation by national, ethnic, religious, and linguistic minority communities and other groups exposed to discrimination. And at the national level, states have adopted a range of innovative awareness-raising and education programs to combat stigma, stereotypes, and prejudice. But to achieve real equality, this kind of progress needs to be urgently replicated and expanded. I am pleased that at this year's World Justice Forum, we will hear from minority and indigenous fellows from whom my office has been supporting worldwide. Human rights defenders from Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Europe. Minority and indigenous leaders and activists fighting against hate speech, hate crime, and other human rights violations. Advocates working to advance racial justice and environmental justice. Community leaders who are addressing the situation of women and girls, of people with disabilities, as well as the right to equality for LGBTIQ plus people and communities. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that at a forum like this, we hear from a diverse range of voices. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. These are some of the most inspiring and powerful words in any United Nations document. I'm convinced that with these words in mind and by taking concrete action together, we can turn the tide and advance towards a world which embraces this vision. It is high time that we unite and redouble our efforts to ensure that no one, anywhere, is deprived of their human rights. I wish you excellent deliberations in our common work towards justice for all and a better future.
Before we turn to the balance of this morning's session, a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, you've already heard it this morning, when the gong rings, that's an indication that you're to return to the auditorium for a special session or to one of the breakout rooms depending on the particular agenda for that day. Secondly, headsets are available for those of you who are using a language other than English. The languages are included are French, Spanish, Arabic, and Russian. All of those languages are available on the same headsets. They're available outside the auditorium. Now it is my privilege and pleasure to introduce Kevin Casas Zamora, Secretary General of International IDEA, to introduce and moderate a discussion among our distinguished panelists.
Good morning to you all, and thank you, Bill, for the introduction, and thank you also to High Commissioner Bachelet for her important and inspirational words, which already introduce some of the crucial topics that we will be touching upon in the course of this conversation. And thank you all for being here with us, both in person, which is wonderful to see, and also virtually. Let me just say that both personally and on behalf of International IDEA, I'm really, really pleased to moderate this discussion. It is an honor that I owe to my good friend and former colleague, Ted Picone, who's somewhere around here, from the World Justice Project, who for many years has done exceptional work to support the cause of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law, both in thought and in practice. The COVID-19 pandemic and now the war in Ukraine have done many things. One of them is to put a huge spotlight on issues of fairness, rights, and justice, both at the domestic and international levels. Social contracts, democratic checks and balances, and the rules-based international order have all shown their fault lines and limitations. Over the rule of law, as democracy itself, has been challenged in particularly acute ways all over the world, and the balance that we've seen over the past couple of years is far from pretty. This is important in its own right, but it's also very concerning because it puts in serious danger the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. As we know, SDG 16 on institutions and justice is instrumental for the whole agenda. To get a sense of the magnitude of these challenges, of the trends, both negative and positive, that we're seeing in key regions of the world, and of the plausible measures that could be adopted to protect the rule of law in the face of gale force winds, we have assembled a stellar panel. I hope that the next 45 minutes or so will give us the opportunity to set the stage for discussions at the forum by paying attention to three particularly vital issues connected to justice and the rule of law. First, how to guarantee fair and effective access to justice for all. Second, how to ensure open and accountable government and combat corruption effectively. And third, how to protect equal rights and eliminate systemic discrimination. To discuss this easy-peasy set of issues, we'll pick on the brains and the experience of three immensely distinguished speakers. We'll have with us Commissioner Vera Jourova, Vice President of the European Commission for Values and Transparency, who will join us virtually, not just yet, as I understand. We also have Mr. Mo Ibrahim, the founder and chair of the Mo Ibrahim Foundation, which, as we know, does wonderful work on issues of governance and leadership in Africa, who will also join us virtually. And here with us in person, I'm joined by Mr. Mohamed Lamin Taravali, the Attorney General and Minister of Justice of Sierra Leone, also a crucial voice in the multi-stakeholder Justice Action Coalition. It's a pleasure to welcome you here, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you, sir.
So I'll start by asking a question to each of our speakers, to whom I kindly ask to respond in about 5 minutes, in the hope that we'll ignite a lively conversation. Since we all care deeply about the rule of law globally and we hope to see progress, I really hope that this conversation will turn out to be, as Abe Lowenthal, one of my mentors, used to say, not an exercise in wishful thinking, but an exercise in thoughtful wishing. So let's start with Mr. Ibrahim. I assume that he's now connected to the meeting. Is that correct? If not, we can start with the Attorney General. Well, I can see Mr. Ibrahim. Thank you for being here, Mr. Ibrahim. As I mentioned in my introduction, you have made a considerable effort to raise the profile of issues connected to the quality of governance and leadership in Africa. When looking at the continent, it's not difficult to be concerned about the proliferation of irregular transitions of power, from military coups to the blatant manipulation of term limit clauses, among others, and also about the shortage in many places of ethical and responsible political leadership. What's your sense of the recent evolution of the continent on issues like respect for constitutional frameworks and corruption?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
We can.
Okay.
We can see you.
Right. Well, we have been for the last 17 or 18 years trying really to work in that area. We produce our index of governance, and measured 237 variables, etc. One important pillar here is rule of law. And what we noticed was that from 2000, Africa made really huge progress in governance, all elements of governance, including the rule of law. In the last 10 years, things start to stagnate. And we noticed in the last 3 years or so, there start to be slight deterioration also in the rule of law and safety of our people. Some remarks here. We unfortunately, military takeovers came back into fashion. We can see some few of this happening. We saw some constitutional changes to the term of presidential of presidents, which is also causing a lot of controversy and sometimes violence. And that again is associated with the phenomena of the rise of the strong man. And it seems, actually it's not an African invention. It seems like there is a global trend around us of those populist and strong leaders. So we can see that happening in many places in Europe and Asia, and well, even we had one in US. This is trends are all worrying. Other issues also bothers me a lot. Also, is the issue of the legal identity. We have over 400 million people without a legal identity. If you don't have a legal identity, you don't exist. And you lose a lot of your legal rights, your civil rights, and your economic rights. It's also a huge, opens a huge opportunity for corruption. Who receives subsidies or certain social or economic benefit from the state. And that's something we're trying to work on with it, and we work with the World Bank on the ID4D, Identity for Development. It's an important issue, and unfortunately, many countries are not really paying enough attention in that area. Corruption. Corruption is still a problem, but it's seen in the global context. Corruption costs Africa about $6-7 billion a year. But there is a much bigger problem, which is the illicit financial flows out of Africa. This is somewhere between 90 and 100 billion dollars a year. Did you hear that number? 90 to 100 billion dollars a year. This is because of mispricing, profit shifting, and that mainly by companies in the north, respectable companies. This is an issue need to be resolved. People need to understand that the total aid to Africa is $52 billion a year. If the aid is $52 billion a year and people are shifting $100 billion a year, the question is who is funding whom? And this is a problem, and it really needs to be addressed. And fortunately, in the north, because of the problem of the tech companies, people started to wake up to the issue of base erosion and profit shifting. That's something has to be handled, and which brings us actually to the whole area of global governance itself, and why it's affecting everything happens in Africa. We have a major problem in area of corruption with the issue of beneficial ownership of trustee companies. If you are a dictator in Africa and you stole some money. You not walk down the streets and put it in the local bank, but you put it in a trustee company somewhere where the identity of the owner is hidden. And there have been huge cry over these issues. It's very sad to see all the countries still dragging their feet. Very few countries did really start to publish the register of ownership. And the European Union, I mean, passed a law in 2019, but countries are supposed to comply with it after 5 years. I don't know why it takes European countries 5 years in order to publish the register. This is ridiculous. I think we need really to see a better moral backbone around us, because we cannot fight corruption alone in Africa. It is connected with bad behavior and lack of good governance elsewhere. I stop here to allow my colleagues to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's go down to the granular level and how many of these challenges play out in a specific place also in Africa. So I'll now turn to the Attorney General. You're at the forefront of the struggle to build rule of law institutions in a place like Sierra Leone, with enormous development challenges, including those derived from past conflict. I always remember Gordon Brown's quip that when it comes to establishing the rule of law, the first 500 years are the most difficult. How do you fight back against this notion that is prevalent in many places, that the rule of law and democracy are sort of dispensable luxuries in places like Sierra Leone, and that, you know, what the country actually needs is decisive executive action to address its multiple development challenges? And since you have just been at the ministerial meeting of the Justice Action Coalition, let me also ask you about the main messages and priorities that emerge from the meeting. The floor is yours, Mr. Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you all greetings from the President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and the people of my country. Before I hit your question, I just want to comment on part of the remarks made by Mo Ibrahim. I resonate well with his position about corruption and about shifting the amount of loan or grants given to Africa and the magnitude of wealth shipped out of Africa yearly. And his question, which I believe, though it's a rhetorical question, but I believe it needs an answer to see who is funding who. In my opinion, I think we are funding, when I say we, I'm referring to Africa, we are funding the aid, loan, and grants given to us by European countries. Take the disparity of the figures, 58, as to over 100 billion or so shipped out of Africa. Mostly it is caused by the companies coming to Africa to mine our minerals in the guise of a free business environment. Of course, Africans, we need those kind of investments to ensure that we create a better life for our people. And, but think about it. When they are coming to Africa to invest, the first thing they will tell you that we come to create jobs for the people of Africa, which we welcome wholeheartedly. Our topic is access to justice. We welcome that wholeheartedly. But again, in the process of mining or investing in Africa, they will ask for tax breaks forever and ever. They will employ about 100 or at most 200 people, not in the capacity of technical people with expert opinion. They will hire them in a cadre of menial jobs and then request from the government a huge amount of tax breaks. When you compare the tax breaks they will get as to the wage that they will pay these workers at the end of the day, it's appalling to an extent that you will say they will be asking us to provide them, to give them tax breaks, and they will hire people. What they will get is far in excess of what they are giving back the countries in return. But to your question about the democracy and the corruption, I know very well that for my country and my government, and since 2002, when the war ended, we've done tremendously well to ensure that the people of Sierra Leone are provided for, at least for the standard of Sierra Leoneans. We've tried extremely in combating corruption, because corruption is the hallmark of access to justice. When an individual is deprived of his daily bread, they cannot put food on the table. They cannot provide education. They cannot access education. They cannot access health care. They cannot access infrastructure. They cannot access pipe-borne water. It's difficult for you to say, I'm in a peaceful and decent society. Let's take our minds away from access to justice, because most times we are limited to justice being tried, or criminals being tried or taken to court. That is just a facet of justice. Justice includes standard of living. Justice includes the decency of an individual and the capacity the person lives his or her life, and the way the person thinks that he can develop or bring up a family in a decent environment. So Africans, we have tried, particularly Sierra Leone, which I will say for sure, that tremendously, the government has done extremely well for within the national concept. There's a free quality education going on at the cost of government, that no child goes to school by paying a dime. They go to school free and they are fed free. The government has tried very well to provide free medical health for maternity for women. Now, as compared to our days back, where the rate of infant mortality has reduced tremendously, that does not mean we have ended or we should not do more. For the people of Sierra Leone, it is their right, based as you being a Sierra Leonean, it is your constitutional right and a God-given right to live in a decent society. Yesterday, during our interministerial meeting, one key issue that came out is the issue of complementarity. How do we continue to assist or to ensure that the rule of law is manifested, is seen, and is implemented around the world? Let's forget about the rule of law does not necessarily mean you taking me to court. The opportunity given to me to realize myself as a person, to live in a decent world, the civic access of me knowing my basic rights, my fundamental rights, the opportunities that you will create for the environment where people will live decently, all these are part of the rule of law and access to justice. In 2002 to 2013, there was a special court that was established, a bilateral special court between the Sierra Leone government and the United Nations, which we used to try criminals of the rebel war that lasted for about 11 years. That ended. 2013 going on, there's a residual special court, which is still in place to try remaining some of the warlords that escaped during the process, and that process is still going on. The reason why that was established, and it was a bilateral agreement, as unlike the one that happened in Rwanda and Yugoslavia, which was sponsored wholeheartedly by United Nations, But with that, it was sponsored both by the government of Sierra Leone and United Nations. It's because the people have faith in the system, regardless of whatever condition they're going through. They believe that justice could be met at their cost. And they believe in the system of reaching out to their communities, their traditional rulers, to ensure that we all live in a peaceful, congenial atmosphere. Because don't forget that the world, though the world is large, but yet it's a global village. In Sierra Leone, we all know each other. So you hurting me necessarily does not mean I should punish you. In most cases, what we need in return, based on communal level, is just to accept, just to apologize. Admit your faults and apologize. That gives you the right. Most people are frowning at going to the mainstream courts. They believe in settling their disputes within their community, taking matters to their chiefs, taking matters to their elders, sit as a peer, discuss issues. And we can cater, we continue to cater for ourselves and look after each other. But the key thing that I want us to focus and take home is what Mo Ibrahim says, that the access to justice, the right to that, and the rule of law don't necessarily mean of what is happening or taking people away or down to trial. It's the perception of investors going to Africa. There should be that reciprocal, that symbiotic relationship. If you come to my house you want a better reception, treat me with respect, and it is cordial, it will be given back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I'm very glad to see that Commissioner Jourova is now with us. It's wonderful to have you here. And let me turn the discussion to Europe. I mean, one of the things that we are seeing coming out of our own efforts at IDEA to measure the quality of democracy is that the problems of democracy have gone global, that they can now be found in regions which we thought were vaccinated against them, including the European Union. The same happens with the rule of law. Can you please tell us about the current challenges to the rule of law, for example, with regards to judicial independence and media freedom that you're seeing at the European level, and give us a sense of the efforts that can and should be done to encourage EU member states to adhere to the core foundational values of the organization?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation. I would love to sit next to you and feel the atmosphere in the hall, but I have to do this interview from my office. To your question, I think that I can bring a lot of evidence about the high priority which the rule of law as a principle and basic value is for the EU, for the European Union. And the Commission, which I represent, has actively defended the rule of law over years. I myself started to work as a Justice Commissioner in 2014, and I remember well the time of innocence when we thought that we do not need to care about rule of law because this is automatic, this is guaranteed, this is even not a European issue, and also too many found the issue too abstract. And these times are gone, and we see now that we have to work hard to keep the principle of rule of law high and fully respected in all the member states. We see growing understanding that the rule of law is not an abstract matter. It is a constitutive part of our European identity. It is a bedrock of democracy. It means free and independent media that can freely criticize those in power. It also means an independent judiciary that does not bow under political pressure and keeps other powers in check. It means a complex system of checks and balances that serves a simple goal, that the democratic winner does not take it all. Faced with Russia's unprovoked and unjustified military aggression against Ukraine, we need now, more than ever, to say how crucially important the rule of law is, both within and outside Europe. We should not forget that the reasons why Ukrainians are fighting for their country is because they freely chose to build it on the principles of democracy and the rule of law. We see people dying for these ideals. The rule of law guarantees mutual trust in Europe. And trust is absolutely critical to our legal system. It is the basis for our contracts and relationships with one another in civil, criminal, commercial, and administrative law. In short, the rule of law is non-negotiable. It is something we all need to defend. Unfortunately, like democracy, the respect for the rule of law cannot be taken for granted even within the EU. Over the past years, we have seen the rule of law concerns emerging in certain member states. This has happened, for example, as regards the respect of judicial independence or media freedom and pluralism. So in 2020, we introduced an annual report on the rule of law. And this is a central element in our efforts to promote genuine dialogue on the rule of law in the EU, the dialogue between the Commission and the member states, all the member states, also the dialogue among those who can help the rule of law principle to be fully respected. The third edition of the annual report is set for adoption in July 2022, and it will be the outcome of over 500 virtual meetings with national ministries, independent bodies, legal professionals, journalist associations, and civil society across the whole European Union. The reports monitor developments on the rule of law across the EU around 4 pillars: the independence, quality, and efficiency of national justice systems, the anti-corruption framework, media freedom and pluralism, and other institutional issues related to checks and balances. So 4 pillars are covered by this report, which is the preventive tool which enables us to have early dialogue with the member states when we see that something goes wrong. I am simplifying a little bit, but this is the core thing. And we want the help to help member states improve. This is why the next rule of law report will come with specific recommendations to member states. And I have to add that protecting the rule of law is not just a noble goal, it is also hard work and a constant struggle for improvements. In the EU, dialogue always comes first, but it must lead to results. This is why we match dialogue with decisive action. In critical situations where judicial independence in a member state is affected, the Commission can launch and is launching infringement proceedings, as we did in the case of Poland. And we also have a responsibility to protect the EU budget against breaches of the rule of law. And this is why we have a conditionality mechanism in force since the last year. And we recently triggered this mechanism against Hungary. And we want to see national recovery plans invest in improving the rule of law. Many member states are doing this by investing in the digitalization of justice, for instance. We have many tools at our disposal to defend the rule of law, but we also have to play our part to achieve our overarching goal of building and safeguarding a real rule of law culture and making sure the rule of law remains a reality. This includes important initiatives like the World Justice Project. And this is why I am happy to have this discussion with you here today and take a global perspective on these very important topics. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Look, we're fast running against our allotted time. So I want to now ask our speakers the magic wand question. I mean, if I gave you a magic wand to wave, to do one thing that would make a critical difference to building more just communities and for getting back on track to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, what would you do? What would be your game-changing action within the spaces in which you operate to do this? And let's try to be very, very snappy, very straight to the point. And I'll do this in a different order. Let's start with the Attorney General.
I would say by country's perspective, to increase the standard of living of the people of Sierra Leone is the only thing we'll ask for is cooperation and support. Support comes in various forms. I will title that under capacity building. I will not name individual or every step or type of support that we'll need, but we need collaboration and support. We believe in the system, we believe in the people of Sierra Leone, we believe in the governance system. We have a Republican constitution that makes the country, that puts the country on a proper democratic forum. We've held democratic elections and will continue to respect the rule of law. However, the important thing that I will say we need is cooperation and collaboration as the government is robustly fighting corruption in order to ensure that the standard of living of the people are catered for.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Now, I would like to go to Commissioner Jourova, if possible.
I have the magic wand.
Exactly.
Yeah?
wave your magic wand. You won't have many chances to do that.
And I have 1 minute to tell you how I would save the world. Okay, I would like to manage 3 things. To convince those who are in power not to desire to have absolute power. This is very important. We all have to respect the limits of our power. We who are ruling the world. I am, by a strange coincidence, part of it, but this is very important to understand and respect the limits. The second thing, again, to convince those who are in power, who are in the governments, in the parliaments, not to consider the rule of law as something which is nice, something noble, something which is important but not urgent. This is wrong. And the third thing, and maybe the most demanding, to explain to citizens that they need the rule of law and democracy for their good quality everyday life. That this is something without which they will have a lot of uncertainty and insecurity in their life. And to convince the people, the citizens, that they have to be much more demanding and keep the people in power under control. Because without the control, there will be spreading this virus of unlimited power. And this is what we must not have in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you cheated. You waved your magic wand 3 times, but I don't mind.
Yes.
I don't mind.
Yes.
No, your last point is very, very important because it speaks to one of the things mentioned by the Attorney General, which is the notion that we cannot detach the rule of law from development and from the well-being of people. Let's go to Mr. Ibrahim.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to follow the commissioner guidelines, and I have 2 of mine 3 times also. The first one, I'll bring all the armies in Africa under civilian controls, or maybe better, I will disband all the armies in Africa. I don't think we're spending too much money, and we just getting oppressed by those guys. I don't think we need them. That's one thing I would do. Get rid of the armies. The second one, then, if I have some power in Brussels and I can somehow manage the European Union, I love the European Union concept. It's a beautiful idea. The talk is wonderful. The execution is not that great. I really, as I said before, I need them to act on the issue of taxation. They're dragging their feet in that. I need them to act on the issue of the beneficial ownership. This is a huge issue of corruption, and people are just dragging their feet. Madam, you are in charge of some of these areas. Please show us some teeth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I come from a country without an army, so your magic wand has a distinct Costa Rican, flavor to it.
Lucky you.
So this has been splendid. I want to thank, in a heartfelt way, our three speakers for the very enlightening insights that were shared in the course of this short discussion. I've learned a lot, and I hope the audience thinks the same. This has given us just a glimpse of the enormity of the challenges that the rule of law is facing around the world, but also of the committed efforts that many good people, such as our speakers, are doing to protect the principles that we all hold dear within the EU, in Africa, and as I know for a fact, in my part of the world, Latin America, and in other places. There's a lot of good stuff happening out there when it comes to the rule of law and democracy. And this conference, as I understand it, is also an effort to highlight those ideas and actions. So let's give our speakers a round of applause. And with that, I give the floor back to the organizers to lead us into the rest of the program of this World Justice Forum. Thank you and have a good day.